Blessings of the Triple Gem, Teruan Saranai. Welcome to our weekly Metta Lab slow session. Hopefully there are no sound issues this week, and we can begin by paying homage to the Triple Gem. We can bow our heads in Anjali. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dhamma, homage to the Noble Sangha. So as we said with Metta Lab, we are going through a series of labs to look at how we can develop loving kindness. So loving kindness, we begin with the Karaniyametta Sutta. So we started that last week, and we're going to continue with that in a very slow and gradual process. Then after that, we'll be looking at the first doorway to Nibbana, or Dukkha Patipada, Dandabhinya, so painful practice with slow realization. So we're building on our Metta Bhavana, our loving kindness meditation. And it culminates probably in a few months' time with Metta with the 7 enlightenment factors, so the Bojjhangas, and also Metta Ceto Vimukti, so liberation of mind by loving kindness. So we're really becoming very, very skilled in the area of loving kindness and to really understand what's underpinning, what's behind loving kindness. So that's where we're at. So we'll continue with developing Metta, and this is in accordance with the Karaniyametta Sutta. So this is from Sutta Nipata, discourse number 1.8. So let's first look at how to get the best out of this session. So this is for everyone who has joined before, but also for those who are newcomers. So the first one is to keep an open mind. The main thing with this is to listen to Buddha's words fresh, also to understand that we're doing sutta meditation, so from start to finish, following the Buddha's instructions. And here we want to really understand the meaning behind what the Buddha is instructing us in order to walk this noble path. So a lot of that has to do with giving up unskilled states or unwholesome states and developing skilled ones. So it's helpful to think with an open mind, I might have some of these unskilled states. Let me investigate and let me then move towards the wholesome side. Then be okay with not understanding everything. So we often say this is a gradual practice. These are the words that Buddha uses: gradual practice, gradual training, gradual progress. So that is what we are hoping to do throughout our sessions. And remember, even if you learn one new Pali word or a different way of looking at the sutta or something like that, be okay with that. It doesn't have to be that you understand absolutely everything, because we will repeat, we will go over things, we will practice. So be okay with what's possible during the session. And if there is an insight or calming of the mind, then be really happy about that. So the other reminder is that we're all learners, we're all seekers, so trainees. So this means that we're coming together to lean on each other's effort. So we're making effort together, encouraging each other to walk this path. And then during the session, we'll have prompts to investigate, to do short meditations, to practice a little bit. And so this is our time to put down our other roles and responsibilities in the world, whether we're parents, whether we have to go to work, whether we're giving service to the community, whether we have to be children to our parents, things like that. And so this is our time for a little bit of self-care. So when we meditate, we are cleaning the mind. And also when we clean the mind, what you'll notice is that the mind starts to calm down. When it's calm, it's possible for us to concentrate the mind, to develop it, and therefore to uplift it. So right now, just take a little bit of a temperature of what's the mind like. Is it heavy? Is it sad? Is it distressed? Is it happy? Whatever it is, it's okay, but just take a little temperature of it. So at least by the end of the session, you have another glimpse. Oh, was there a difference or distinction by spending some time with the Buddha's words, by spending some time with good friends? And what we also say is when we meditate, Buddha encourages us to use our own examples, and he usually gives us similes or examples from the time of the Buddha. But for us, we also need to connect with what's happening in our own life, because this is how we connect with the Dhamma. When that is the case, the other reminder is not to feel so bad or guilty if we are bringing up things that we have done that is unskillful or unwholesome. The main thing is we do this so that we can actually come to the right path, to actually admit and disapprove of those wrong things, and to understand from Buddha's teaching we're coming to the right path. And that's a very important thing. The other thing is when we meditate and we go through our own examples, not to go off with the stories and to bring the mind back when we note that it's going off and dwelling in those stories about people or situations, but to bring it back. And then lastly, let's have good wishes for everyone. So everyone who's joining right now and all the people that have helped us on this journey up to this point and who continue to help us to allow us to practice. Okay. So I'll do a quick recap of what we covered before. And one of the things that we looked at was, why did Buddha teach loving kindness? And of course, we know from the Dhammapada verse and commentary, as well as the Sutta Nipata commentary, that it was for protection. It was also, we know it's an antidote for anger, including ill will and things of that nature. We also know it's to develop the mind, and of course, it is a pathway to Nibbana. So it's very powerful meditation. We also talked about why it is meritorious and how significant it is to develop a mind of loving kindness, even for the time it takes to pull a cow's udder. So it's the second most meritorious in terms of what the Buddha had said in the Valama Sutta. So even it's more meritorious than keeping our precepts, than taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, than building a dwelling for the Sangha of the four quarters, to feeding the Sangha of bhikkhus headed by the Buddha, and all the way through the noble ones, feeding the noble ones, and also the Lama's great offering. So this is our encouragement or inspiration in order to come and learn the loving kindness meditation. And of course, we also went through the 11 blessings of loving kindness. So this is from the Metta Sutta. So these are also very powerful, and we start to accrue some of these things by developing loving kindness in accordance with Karaniyametta Sutta. But it really comes to fruition when we get to the end of our Metta Labs by developing liberation of the mind by loving kindness. Because by that point, we would have done what Buddha has said, which is pursue this pathway, really develop it, cultivate it, make it our vehicle so it becomes our conscious competence, the basis on which we are manifesting in the world. And we carry it out, we consolidate it, and we properly undertake it. So these blessings really come to fruition when we actually do that. So we basically went through and said, this is the whole Gatha, the whole Sutta of Karaniyametta. And what we're extracting, and we will go through the whole Sutta, but what we are extracting is an insight pathway, a knowledge pathway, a jnana pathway in Pali. And that is really so that we develop certain qualities that make us skilled at loving kindness, that make us competent at loving kindness. And so this is something that we will be developing and practicing and making sure we become good at it. We also linked loving kindness with the Noble Eightfold Path because both are rooted in non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. So what we do in the world is very much our conditioning is greed, hatred, and delusion. And so what Buddha does in this meditation is to ensure that we establish right view throughout. Therefore, our thoughts, our intention also becomes aligned with the right view. And then we have the Aryakanta Sila. So we develop the kind of Sila that is dear to the noble ones. So the right speech, right action, right livelihood. And therefore, at the same time, we apply right effort to make these things happen. And right mindfulness is guiding us and checking with right view. And so the outcome is right concentration. So we will keep coming back to this because we keep activating the Noble Eightfold Path by doing this meditation. So they go hand in hand. Now, one of the things that I wanted to highlight was this sutta called Dhatu So Sansandana Sutta. And this is from Itivuttaka. I really like this because when we develop loving kindness, we are with the noble ones that are practicing loving kindness. We're with the Brahmas who are practicing loving kindness. And so this words of the Buddha says, because it is according to like elements that beings associate with each other and come together. Beings of low disposition associate and come together with beings of low disposition. Beings of good disposition associate and come together with beings of good disposition. It was so in the past, it will be so in the future, it is so in the present. So when we come together like this for Metta Labs, like goes with like, and we're wanting to develop something that the Brahmas are always abiding in. They're always abiding in this Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha. So like goes with like. And so it says here, desire born of association is severed by non-association. As one riding on a wooden plank would sink in the mighty ocean, even so one of virtuous life sinks by consorting with an indolent person. Therefore shun an indolent person. So for this time that we're meditating and coming together, listening to the Buddha's words, we're associating with good beings, with those of good disposition. And these are the words of a noble one, of the Buddha, the perfectly enlightened Buddha. So when we associate with people who do not practice, who follow the path of greed, hatred, and delusion, it's like we would sink, even though we are keeping certain amount of sila. So we have to be very cautious. And so it keeps on by saying, one who makes little effort, live with those who dwell secluded. The noble ones resolved and meditative, who are ever strenuous and wise. So an indolent person makes very little effort towards the path. Whereas, like those who are dwelling secluded, then they are the ones that are able to maintain the path, and they make the same resolutions that the noble ones resolve and meditate on. So we need to be strenuous and wise according to what the noble ones are doing. And so this is what Mettā Lab is actually trying to do, that we come together and we're with the noble ones, we're with the words of the Buddha, and we are aspiring to actually make effort towards developing metta, developing loving kindness. We don't wish to fall from that. So these are very good words of reminder. Like goes with like. So sometimes when we have difficulty outside in the world, it's good to remember sometimes there is danger by associating with people who don't understand the path, and to be cautious, to be kind, but also to be cautious. So when we started with metta, we said Karaniyametta kusalena, what should be done of benefit and good, yantang santang padang abhisamecha, so as to realize the state of peace is this. So this is a pathway to nibbana. And what we are doing is trying to develop the 10 wholesome states. So we went through the Sadhu Suttas last week, and these were the suttas that were talking about the fact that the Noble Eightfold Path, in fact, the Tenfold Path, is actually what is good, what is skillful, and also the 10 wholesome states is what is good or skillful. And so that's what is being developed when we do this Karaniyametta meditation. And ultimately, it's to help us to realize Nibbana, so the complete cessation of all suffering. So it's a very powerful meditation. And I'll keep saying that because it's the truth. So when we do this meditation, the first step that we look at is we need to be capable and we need to be upright. So we went through what it means to be upright. And when we went through that, we went through the Sansapaniya Sutta, and we also looked at the different results of bad actions in order to understand and establish right view about karma and rebirth. And so when we look at upright, just as a reminder, we looked at bodily actions and we looked at verbal actions. So these are more like our gross actions. It's easier to start with this. So to become upright or straight, so not crooked, which is what some Sapaniya Sutta was saying, that creeping discourse, we need to correct where we are not straight. And so a lot of these meditations is about giving up what is unwholesome in order to be able to develop what is wholesome. And it is what is wholesome or skillful is what helps us to develop loving kindness. So in terms of bodily actions, last week we went through and we looked at killing living beings, panatipata, that is associated with the hate path. And then taking what is not given or stealing, adinadana or adinadana, that's about greed path. And then kamesu michachara is about the deluded path. And so when you think about these actions, they're actually harmful. They're not good. So how can we have metta, loving kindness, if we still have these things? So what we said is that we need to abandon these things, and by abandoning them, then we come to the good side, the skill side, and we start to develop non-hate, non-greed, non-delusion. And what we said was we take our own examples or an example and admit that this does not match with loving kindness. And so at that point, we take a decision by saying, I disapprove of this. So one of the things that Buddha says is that there are three kinds of parinya, like full comprehension or full understanding. There's jnata parinya, there's tirana parinya, and there's pahana parinya. So when we talk about jnata, it's the knowledge. Buddha is saying you have to abandon it, because if you want to be upright, you have to not have these things. You must be a person who doesn't kill, who doesn't steal, who doesn't have sexual misconduct. So tirana parinya is when we make a decision that we know this knowledge about what is skillful, what is unskillful, and we make a decision. So when we say we disapprove of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, that is tirana parinya. And then when we say pahana parinya, we say, I want to abandon it. And so that is how we become upright in terms of bodily actions. And then with our verbal actions, we were saying we need to give up the false speech. So false speech is the greed part, so that's musavada in Pali. And also we need to give up divisive speech, which is part of the hate part. So this is pisunavacha. And then when it comes to harsh speech, farusavacha, this is also the hate paths. We need to give that up. They don't match with loving kindness. And then when it comes to frivolous speech or empty talk, that's part of the deluded path. And so this is sampapalapa in Pali. So again, what we would do is take our own examples of where we have done these things and realize, actually, this does not match with loving kindness. There's harm that we do with our speech when we have false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And so at that point, we say we disapprove and we want to abandon it. And so the same thing, we understand the Dhamma, we make a decision, and then we abandon it. So that's how the jnata parinya, tirana parinya, the decision, and then the pahana parinya gets complete, that we abandon it. So I think the other thing I would say is about mundane versus supramundane. So sometimes people have a bit of a problem with this, particularly if their job entails maybe killing, or they think that there's certain things that are allowable in the world. And so one of the encouragements I would say, particularly if one has a job that entails killing, like a fisherman or a butcher or a soldier or something like that, or some other example where in our minds we think we condone the bodily and verbal misconduct, it's to understand that the worldly tendency, and in Pali this is lokika, it's a mundane worldly rule or understanding. It's not where we're trying to develop when we look at this Karaniyametta Sutta. We're trying to take a supramundane, lokuttara perspective. That's what the Buddha is showing us, that we need to understand it from the Buddha's perspective to walk the supramundane path. So even if you're, say, a fisherman, but you do the meditation, even though you've been killing, but say, for example, in the meditation, you realize, actually, Buddha's right. I understand that karma and rebirth, this is bad. And I've actually spoken to fishermen who've actually said, we don't want to do this, but we're poor, we've got nothing else to do, but we know it's bad. Now, if you meditate as a fisherman, for example, and the fisherman in the meditation says, I disapprove right now. So it doesn't matter what I did in the past, but I disapprove right now of the killing that I do from fishing. Then at that point, he abandons it. So if he were to die in the next moment, then he would ascend upwards, most likely, because he's actually disapproved. He's come to the supramundane path. So every time we meditate, that's what we do. Now, in daily life, a fisherman who keeps meditating may choose differently, may try his best to find a different livelihood at that point, having attained some kind of wisdom, maybe even path and fruit. But for us, it's important to understand wherever we kind of allow ourselves to wobble, to kind of endorse something that the Buddha is saying is unskillful or unwholesome, we need to really check that. We really need to look at it, because Buddha is actually asking us supramundane development of loving kindness. Really give ourselves a chance in the meditation. So I think it's helpful to do a short meditation. And it's in the meditation that the mind, when you clean it, so when you listen, it starts to be clean, particularly if you agree, if you approve what the Buddha is saying. But when you do a short meditation, even a short one, and you bring your own example, it's very helpful, because at that point, the mind actually lets go. So just to go over the meditation again, for each of these kinds of actions, bodily and verbal, we take our own example. So we might take, for killing living beings, we actually kill cockroaches or something. And so we decide, okay, I disapprove. There's non-metta to those cockroaches. So I'm going to give that up. For stealing, for example, I took something when I was young from my mother's wallet and I didn't have permission. I understand that that harmed my mother. So I'm going to give that up. I disapprove of that. And so we come to the right path. Same with sexual misconduct. Maybe we cheated on our girlfriend or boyfriend when we were younger. So we realized that harmed that person. So that's not metta. I'm going to give it up. And the same with the speech. So wrong speech in terms of lying. Maybe we lied to our children about something. And so you realize that's harmful. If they were to find out, they would be very upset. So let me disapprove, let me give it up. Same with the divisive speech. If I've split people before, people that were in harmony, well, that would have harmed them for my own benefit. So let me give that up. I disapprove. And same with the harsh speech. If I told someone off at work, if I told off my children, and you realize that's not metta, so let me disapprove. I give that up right now. And same with the frivolous speech. Maybe I stop someone from doing something important, like studying or doing their work. I interrupted. Maybe I gossiped about someone that was harmful. Let me give that up. And so the main thing is, when you do it, let the mind release from the tension of actually having done misconduct. And so that means we don't have any holes in our metta bucket. So let's do this meditation just for a few minutes. Okay, blessings of the Triple Gem. Blessings of the Triple Gem, we can come out of the meditation. So as I said last week, this is not a small thing, this very first step. It's actually a very important step because we don't clean in this way. And so when we actually take some time to do it, it's a very big thing. So even if you are cleaning the mind for longer, and it's just the first step, the mind really brightens because if you can imagine that we're now with the noble ones who are having this kind of sila. So if you remember from even Samyutta Nikaya and about stream entry, if one has the virtue dear to the noble ones, then that's one of the characteristics or factors, other than having confidence in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, that one is able to enter the stream. So it is that important to get this right. So when you know that, and even if you're contemplating just at home, sitting there, the mind starts to brighten. And for some people, it's very quick that the tingles kind of come throughout the body, that one can go immediately to a higher absorption in the mind. It gets so happy. So don't underestimate this first step of loving kindness. So we can now come to Suju, and we did cover this last week, which was thoroughly upright. So understanding how important the sila is, the precepts that we've taken in many ways, then this is the determination, this very strong determination, knowing that we don't want any holes in our metta bucket. So this is only the second step. And what we're saying here is we make a very strong intention or determination to keep these things that we don't want to kill, we don't want to steal, we don't want to have sexual misconduct, and we don't want to have the 4 kinds of wrong speech. We don't want them to come back again. We've given them up, so we don't want them to come back again. So we're going to keep our precepts. So even right now, let's just make the determination for this meditation, for this session right now, let's keep that sila, let's keep those precepts. And so it's as simple as that. So when we go through the first step and the second step, you can see we are establishing very, very good morality, very good foundation for what we're building in terms of loving kindness. So now we come to easy to instruct, suvaco. So this is again a very important thing. And we're starting to look at the mental side of things. So this is only one of the first few that we're starting with in terms of the mental side of things. And if you have studied this before, the sutta that really talks about suvaco, like the difference between duvaca and suvaca. So duvaca being difficult to instruct or difficult to admonish versus suvaca, which is easy to instruct, easy to admonish. Sometimes it's also translated as disobedient or obedient in terms of these Pali words. So Anumāna Sutta is where Venerable Mahamoggallana gives an instruction or teaching to the monks. And so what he says is, he says, friends, though a bhikkhu asks thus, let the Venerable Ones instruct me, I need to be instructed by the Venerable Ones. Yet if he is difficult to instruct, so he's duvaca, and possesses qualities that make him difficult to instruct, if he is impatient and does not take instruction rightly, then his companions in the spiritual life think that he should not be spoken to or instructed. They think of him as a person not to be trusted. So one of the things that appears in the Digha Nikaya is that if one is easy to instruct, then you can have good friends and it's easy to make progress on the spiritual path. So likewise, if one is difficult to instruct, then you associate with bad company and you don't make any progress at all. You actually decline. So there is incentive here to be easy to instruct. And the person or the being that we want to be most obedient to or the easiest to instruct from is the Buddha. And then, of course, the noble ones and anyone that is helping to follow the path. So in contrast, easy to instruct, suvaco, which is a quality that this loving kindness, we need this. Venerable Mahamoggallana says, friends, though a bhikkhu does not ask thus, let the Venerable Ones instruct me, I need to be instructed by the Venerable Ones, Yet, if he is easy to instruct and possesses qualities that make him easy to instruct, if he is patient and takes instruction rightly, then his companions in the spiritual life think that he should be spoken to and instructed, and they think of him as a person to be trusted. So this is the gist, or the real tenet behind being easy to instruct. And so this is what we need to bear in mind when it comes to the different qualities that Venerable Mahamoggallana goes through. So in terms of being easy to instruct, there are 16 qualities. There's also 16 qualities that make us difficult to instruct, and it's exactly the opposite of what's on this page. So there are various videos on the channel that have gone through the Anumāna Sutta, why we struggle to understand Dhamma is these qualities. So when we go through it, what we see is we cannot have evil wishes and be dominated by evil wishes. So these are things such as wanting the best seat, wanting to be served first, wanting to be respected, wanting to be asked to speak in public, wanting to receive the best requisites, things like that. And then the second one is one does not glorify oneself nor has contempt for others. So it's like raising ourselves and lowering others. So that's something that has a lot of self in there, self-importance. The next four are around anger. So it's a gradual build-up of anger and how we refuse to be instructed. In fact, it's almost like there's something in our mind that just refuses. And so we get angry when someone tries to instruct us or to help us or to give us feedback. And then when it comes to the next five, it's about when we're given feedback, all the different ways that we prevaricate, resist, turn on the person who's trying to help us, and counter reprove them. And so it's a very bad kind of attitude and behavior. So this is what makes us difficult to instruct. So when we give that up, when we give up the anger, when we give up uh, the way that we receive feedback, the horrible side of it, then it makes us easy to instruct, that we're willing to hear, to be instructed, to be given feedback. And then there's all these qualities which are mental stains. So derogation and disparaging, envy and stinginess, fraudulence and deceit or hypocrisy, being obstinate and also arrogant. And the very last one is that we hold on tenaciously to our own views, that we won't give them up easily. And so the views that we're holding on to are all the views that would lead us back into rebirth, really. Ones that brought us to this birth, and ones that will continue to bring us to this another rebirth, to the endless rounds of rebirth. And so what Venerable Mahamoggallana and the Buddha is really saying when it talks about being easy to instruct is being willing to bend to hear the Buddha's words, to see where he's trying to correct our view, trying to teach us, and then also being able to say, well, maybe I might not have the right idea. Maybe I need to actually really look at that. And so that is really the whole impression that Venerable Mahamoggallana is trying to convey to us. Now, a person who knows and develops these 16 wholesome qualities really, really well, in terms of loving kindness, one can develop all the way up to nipako. So that's one is prudent. Because when you have wholesome qualities that make one easy to instruct, that means you never raise yourself to think, I know better, I'm better, I know better. And you wouldn't get angry if someone tries to help you. You wouldn't turn aside or hit back at someone who's trying to teach you. And you wouldn't have the mental stains that block you from the metta path in this case. So it's one to really look at in one's own time, this Anumāna Sutta. There's many benefits to the path because from what I've seen, any person who is easy to instruct, who's willing to heed the Buddha's words, the Buddha's instruction, to really clean the mind, clean one's actions, goes very, very swiftly through the path. And also at the same time succeeds, progresses really well on the path because you're willing to do certain things rather than to question even why does the Buddha say that I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to meditate, I'm not willing. And so that makes the person very duvacha. And so it's almost like self-sabotage, if you think of it that way. Like if one is willing to have these good qualities of easy to instruct, then there's no self-sabotage. There's actually having confidence in the Buddha. And we develop that through our meditation, that when we have good meditations, we start to see, the Buddha's right. Now I'm on the right track. So it's something to bear in mind. The other thing that the Anumāna Sutta gives is this simile of the mirror. So I'll just read this out. Venerable Mahamoggallana says, just as when a woman or a man, young, youthful, fond of ornaments, on viewing the image of her own face in a clear, bright mirror or in a basin of clear water, sees a smudge or a blemish on it, she makes an effort to remove it. But if she sees no smudge or blemish on it, she becomes glad thus. It is a gain for me that it is clean. So too, when a bhikkhu reviews himself thus, and so on, then he can abide happy and glad, training day and night in wholesome qualities or states. So the Buddha also has this teaching as well about the simile of the mirror. And this is the thing. When it comes to Anumāna Sutta and also Vatupama Sutta, which we will refer to next, when we are willing to look in the mirror and we see, I might have this. And remember at the start we said, keep an open mind. I might have this. So when we have these qualities, being happy when we want to remove them, that it is a gain for us, particularly on the spiritual path, to actually clean it up, to abandon it. And so that's where the happy mind comes from in meditation. It comes from, I understand this Dhamma, I'm connecting with it, and I'm going to walk this path. So bear that in mind as well. So the other sutta that is also complementary for suvaco, because it has very similar mental stains that we are told to clean up. So this is the sutta where the Buddha says there are imperfections that defile the mind. So he gives the simile of the cloth, and he says if the cloth is unclean and we try to dye it red, blue, or another color, what happens is the dye job doesn't come out well. It's blotchy. It's a bad dye job. But if the mind is clean, it doesn't have any blemishes. When you dye it, it comes out really well. So the same thing, if we clean the mind of these defilements, so there's again 16, then what happens is the mind gets to uplift. It gets to concentrate very easily because it's clean. And so you can wield the mind in a very skillful way when the mind is clean. So this is the other complementary sutta, because when we do loving kindness, we can focus even simply on 4 things. And the 4 things that appear in Anumāna Sutta as well as Vatupama Sutta is derogation, disparaging, envy, and stinginess. And there are other things that intersect as well, but those are the 4 that we can do, particularly for loving kindness. Now, if you're the type of person that has a lot of time for meditation, what I've tended to do is either do Anumāna Sutta meditation first or Vatupama Sutta first. So when I developed loving kindness, my go-to for many, many years, and it still is, particularly even when times are tough, is I go through the 16 mental stains of Vatupama Sutta and clean it. Then I do loving kindness. And it makes it very, very solid in terms of the foundation for loving kindness. And when you do loving kindness, it's also quicker because the mind is clean. Now, when we look at how do we become easy to instruct, so what I was saying was we can focus on 4. So derogation, makka, envy, which is issa in Pali, disparaging, palasa in Pali, and stinginess, which is macharya. So those of you who have done Vatupama Sutta before, Anumāna Sutta before, you will be familiar with this. And the reason why we want to remove it is because what we'll see is that these are, again, holes in our metta bucket. So that means our foundation will not be strong. We will have obstructions. We will have preferences. That means we can't spread metta to all living beings. It means the people we don't like, the people we have problems with, then they are the holes in our metta bucket. We'll only be able to spread it to the people we like, the people that we get along with, that we don't have these mental stains towards. So derogation, makka, is really when we have contempt for another person. We perceive that they're worthless or to a certain degree not worthy, not valuable. So we depreciate or belittle or we cut them down. So we erase or remove their good qualities. And what we can say is that in our mind, there's a post-perception of taking something as me and mine. So derogation, what we said before, is it's conditioned by anger, and we assign permanency through anger. So anger is often where we say, he or she is harming me. that is now. He or she has harmed me in the past, he or she will harm me now, and he or she, I expect they will harm me in the future. So that's what we said about anger in the past. So derogation stems from anger. So we're angry with a person and then we remove their good qualities, we belittle them. So that's where we assign permanency, because when we're angry, we think this person is always going to be like that. Those qualities that we're angry about, they'll always be like that. And so our anger becomes very solid when we think that. And when we don't remove anger, we hold on to the anger as if what that person has done is permanent. So with derogation, because it stems from anger, we have the same kind of thing of this permanency. So examples that we've had before, say we're doing a job and we go for a promotion, and another colleague who maybe we've had a blue with before, some kind of anger or disagreement, and they go for the job and they get it and we don't. And so in our mind, when someone asks us, oh, you didn't get the job, and then they kind of infer that person maybe didn't deserve it. What we might do when we have derogation in the mind is we think, yes, they didn't deserve it. And then we might speak out by saying, removing that person's good qualities. Maybe that person, we think they don't have the right experience, they don't have the same qualifications as I do, and so we are devaluing them, depreciating them. Now the problem with that is that there are lies in that, because the person or the panel that have given them the promotion has clearly decided that they are worthy, that they have the skills, they have the experience, and they have the qualifications. So at that point, one needs to look at the derogation in the mind. Now, another example could be at home. Maybe we're frustrated with our partner and we have children. And say, for example, they're instructing the kids in a particular way and we don't agree with it. So we might, in our mind, remove their good qualities. We might remove the good qualities of how they're parenting because we disagree with what they're doing. Maybe we think they're being too lenient or something, and in that way we're depreciating their parenting skills. So whatever the case may be, that's another example. Or maybe with siblings, we again, maybe we're angry with a sibling over something they've done in the past, and therefore in our mind, when we see them getting along with our parents and our parents favoring them, then in our mind we might think, oh, this person, isn't around all the time, or they live somewhere else and they never come and help, and so we assign some sort of permanency to their behavior, but it may not be true. Like in each of these examples, we need to question that. Is that really true? Because what's underneath when we say there's a post-perception of taking something as me and mine, underneath it is, in the work example, we're thinking that promotion should have been mine. It should be mine. In the case of the parenting skills, I'm a better parent than my partner. Or in terms of a sibling, I'm the better child. That favoritism or that praise that the parents are giving, it should be for me. So that's where derogation really needs to be looked at. And in terms of loving kindness, what we see is that there's no kindness being offered to the people that we depreciate, the people that we remove their good qualities. There's an intolerance, an aversion. And so we need to admit that. So when we see that in the meditation, whether you take your own example, you need to disapprove. Like, this is not something that makes me easy to instruct. This does not match with loving kindness. So I need to give that up. And the other thing to say about when we look at these qualities, and I didn't mention this before, but these four things, why they're so important, why we can just do these four, is because these are linked to the brahmaviharas. So derogation, we've said before, is linked to having mudita. So when we remove the derogation, we can be happy for others. When we remove envy, we can have compassion for others, understanding there's no permanent happiness, there's also suffering. And in terms of disparaging, when we remove it, it's linked to equanimity. And when we remove the stinginess, it's linked to loving kindness. So the other thing, when we're very skilled at not having these four, it's also linked to how we can develop the iddhipadas, so the spiritual powers, or the four bases of spiritual power. And it's also linked to passaddhi sambojjhanga, so the enlightenment factor of tranquility. So if anyone is keen on being able to be more skilled at those things, then it's very good to look at these four mental stains. So we've done derogation. The next one is envy. So envy is the state of being jealous regarding gain, honor, respect, and reverence paid to others. So this is where we're jealous of someone's looks, we're jealous of someone's job or career, we're jealous of someone's lifestyle, we're jealous of someone's family, the family that they're born to, or the family that they've gained in this life, or we're jealous of someone's beauty or looks, we're jealous of someone's popularity. So what happens is often we think he or she has, I don't. He or she can, I can't. And so what happens here is that we don't tolerate another person's gain. We think that they're experiencing permanent happiness from whatever it is we're envious of or jealous of. And what we've learnt before when we've done these mental stains is that envy is conditioned by derogation. So remember, with derogation, we've assigned some kind of permanency. And usually what it is we also think this person is having permanent happiness. And of course, underneath, because of derogation, we've also taken something as me and mine, that I want to have that. That should be for me. So envy has many, many examples. This one is very straightforward. People often think, oh, I'm not an envious person. But as we said at the beginning, having an open mind, it's good to think, I might have this. Now, one of the easiest ways is if we spot people with these particular mental stains or defilements, if we see someone derogating or someone having envy, often it's good to turn that around and think, do I do that? So if you see someone envious about someone's, career or someone's success, someone's family situation, whatever it is, then turn that around and think, do I have that? Am I envious of someone's house, their newly built house? Am I envious of someone's popularity, the way that they gain friends and followers? So when you see it, you realize actually there's something in here that clearly does not match with loving kindness, that there's a hole in my metta bucket towards these particular people. So when you see it, you need to realize, I need to disapprove of this. I need to give this up. And of course, when we realize that there is no permanent happiness, that the person who got the promotion has to work harder, the person who so-called has a wonderful family, but has to work hard at that. And maybe it's not as it seems. We're looking through the window, it's not as it seems. Even the person that is popular, there's a lot of fear with that, having to safeguard popularity, having to safeguard power and influence, if that is what we're envious of. And so when we take our own examples, it's really to see that and then to disapprove. Because if we disapprove, we take that decision and we abandon it, then we don't have that hole in our metta bucket and we can develop really well. So the next one is disparaging. So this is palasa in Pali. So disparaging is a form of divisiveness or bullying, and it's based on our very strong likes, dislike, or preferences. So we know that when we have this in our mind, we always measure. We measure one thing against another thing, and we divide, we separate, we block, or we split. So what we're seeing there are differences in our volitional formations. So we're always comparing, measuring, and that's where the differences come in. And so we put certain people and things into different boxes, the ones that we like, the ones that we dislike, and so we palasa based on that. Now, this disparaging leads to pisunavacha, leads to the slander or the divisive speech. And so what we do know is that disparaging is conditioned by hostility. So we're holding grudges. We are labeling people. And so this is how we place things into boxes. So the disparaging comes when we don't like people being in harmony. We don't like people who have different views than us. That's a difference in volitional formations. We don't like people who support different teams that we don't support, or follow different ideology that we don't follow. And so disparaging comes in the mind when we want to actually move towards splitting. We want to split, we want to block, we want to divide. And so examples in daily life come when we see maybe our children are associating with people that we think are not right for them. And so we might want to split our children from the people that they're hanging out with. Or it might be at work. Our boss seems to be favoring somebody or a group of people, and we don't like that. And so we go and we want to go and have a word in our boss's ear to split them. So there are certain preferences that are driving that. Even when it comes to family, we may have certain preferences around different parts of the family. We might hold grudges towards certain aunties, uncles, or even different parents. And so we might try and split different family members in that regard. And when it comes to, our friends, maybe our friend is dating or associating with people that we don't particularly like. And so in our mind, we might think, oh, I want to split that because I don't agree with that. That person has different political views, so let me split it from my friend. And so that's how the division comes, the palasa, this disparaging. And so in our meditation, again, we need to look at that. We can see that there's harm coming from splitting people, measuring, dividing, and it doesn't align with metta. So we need to actually look at that and say, I disapprove. I want to walk this path. I want to develop metta, so I disapprove. Let me give that up. Let me give up disparaging. And then the last one that we look at is stinginess. So stinginess is very obvious. We are very protective of our gains or benefits. We're not willing to share, particularly with material things. And we are often selfish. So stinginess and selfish often are like synonyms in this regard. And so it's the opposite of generosity. And again, there are differences in our volitional formations because stinginess is conditioned by this disparaging. We've measured, we've divided, we've split, and therefore we act on that. We actually implement that with our stinginess. So there are 5 kinds of stinginess that the Buddha talks about. Stinginess regarding gain. So this is the labhamacharya in Pali. So this one is very obvious. Say we win the lotto, we don't want to share with people. We don't want to share with family members or friends. Or someone gives us a nice big cake and we don't want to share it with anyone, or we take it to work, but we only want to share it with people we like. So there's labhamacharya, there's stinginess regarding gain. And so that can apply to many, many things. It could apply to stock tips. It could apply to windfalls that we gain. It could be when people give us gifts we don't want to share. And then the second one is stinginess regarding dwellings, so avasamacharya. So this is stinginess regarding our home, the belongings in our home. And we don't want to invite people over. We only want to invite selected people, or maybe we don't invite anyone. And apart from that, it could also be our space, that we are very protective of our physical space or the space in our home. You can only go into one room, not all the other rooms. It could be stinginess also regarding you can only use these plates, you can't use my plate, and things like that. Avasa also refers to our body, so we may be very stingy regarding this body because this is our most precious home. So that could be physical space in terms of proximity to this body. It could also be whether we want to donate organs, for example, if someone in our family is sick. Then the third one is stinginess regarding families or groups, so kulamacharya in Pali. So this one is very obvious. It could be we may be stingy regarding our affiliations, so we may belong to particular professional associations and we're very stingy regarding we think the ones that we belong to are the best and the other ones that exist are not. It could be protective of the sports teams we support. So it could be if we support the Australian cricket team, then we're stingy towards all the other country teams that are not the Australian team. Or it could be politics, like if you are on the Democrats or the Republicans or Liberal, Labor, whichever way it goes, whichever you're following, then you would cast out all the other ones. And so that's how one can be protective. Or if one is very strong towards women's rights, then that means you might reject males if it's very, very strong. And same with sexual orientation and all kinds of religious beliefs. And even within Buddha Dhamma is also can be like that as well. Certain groups, Dhamma groups, one would reject and not have loving kindness towards for that reason. And then the fourth one is stinginess regarding reputation. So we're very protective of our good name. Like even at work, we'd be very protective of how people view us. What is the persona, the work persona that we want to portray and protect? It could also be in Dhamma, whether we're a moral person, how that reflects on us. And so we make choices based on that. So anyone who comes to tamper with that or make it difficult for us, then we would be quite stingy towards them. And also, we can be very protective around not showing the bad side. Like, not all of us are 100% moral all the time. We have blemishes, but maybe stinginess for reputation is where we try and protect that and not show it to a certain extent, and do other things in order to protect it. And then the fifth one is Dhammamacharya, so this knowledge, stinginess regarding Dhamma knowledge. And so this can be sciences, it can be any other worldly kind of knowledges about what's the best diet, what's the best exercise regime, our professional knowledge. We can be very protective over that. And so this is where, when stinginess kicks in, it normally sounds like, I'm right, you're wrong. There's flaws in what you're telling me, but there's no flaws in mine. I'm right. And so this can also happen with regards to Dhamma, where people get into huge dispute about the jhanas, about what the Buddha really means, about liberation, all kinds of things. And so stinginess regarding knowledge is also a very big one. So what we need to do when we meditate is to go through all of that. But I mean, even if we were to do a meditation now, it's really to see that even just stinginess regarding gain, to be able to look at an example. And for some people, it can be very apparent where the stinginess is. Some people have said in the past very quickly, oh, I don't invite anybody to my house. I have that. And so when you know that, then you know that there's something that is like a hole in the metta bucket. And so you admit that, you see, oh, this is not actually very helpful to the path. There's something very protective there. So let me give that up. I disapprove of it. Let me give that up. Or if one is not willing to share with more people, then you know that as well. And so it's very good to look at it. And this is a major block for loving kindness, because when you have these preferences, you can clearly see you would only spread metta to the people you like, the people that you are within, that you include within your stinginess, but that you are generous towards. And then everybody else that you don't like, that you want to block, you want to exclude, you can't cultivate metta towards them. It's so apparent. And so it's really good to look at this. Now, one of the things I wanted to link, so if you've been following the Profitable Perception series on Sutta Meditation series, then this is very, very clear. So what we've gone through so far is, you can see with a lot of what drives our behavior is we have this perversion or corruption in our mind about permanency. We have the perversion and corruption in our mind that about me and mine. You know, we're very protective. A lot of what drives defilements is this atta in Pali, this me and mineness, this self. And also this idea that what we're experiencing is long-lasting sukha. Like we don't turn our mind towards the dukkha. We actually think other people are experiencing all this sukha, and so it's worth it to be taking it as me and mine. And we don't see the finite nature of our experiences, that there is a depreciation in the experience. Like 1 minute we're happy, next minute it subsides, next minute we're happy again it subsides. That's how it works. And ultimately, it is that way, that if we are subject to birth, then aging, sickness, and death, where is this permanency? That means we always meet dukkha, we always meet this unhappiness, this unsatisfactoriness. So where this links with Profitable Perception series is that what you can see is we are having all these unprofitable perceptions, that there's beauty, that there's long-lasting happiness, that we can make these things last, and it's worth taking as me and mine. A lot of what drives us is it's worth taking as me and mine. So there's this sutta called the Roga Sutta, and the Buddha's talking about bodily illness and mental illness. And I want to focus on the second bit about mental illness. But what it says is, because there are these two kinds of illness, which two, bodily illness and mental illness. So bodily illness, we understand. People are found who can claim to enjoy bodily health for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years, for 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 years, and even for 100 years and more. So we understand that some of us get to keep our good health for a number of years. So that's quite straightforward. Now, the second part, but apart from those whose taints have been destroyed. So this is talking about kinasava, so beings who have completely destroyed the taints. Other than those, this is what it's saying, it is hard to find people in the world who can claim to enjoy mental health even for a moment. So if you read this correctly, the Buddha is saying that for all of us, and even people that have path and fruit, what happens is that we don't enjoy mental health, where the mind is bright, where the mind is clean, where the mind is uplifted, even with path and fruit, for more than a moment at a time. So maybe in meditation, such as doing this meditation, cleaning for mental stains, we get healthy. But it's only momentary. When we come out of the meditation, we get sick again, mentally sick again. It's only someone who has completely destroyed the taints, so a kinasava, can say that they're mentally healthy. So when you understand that, when you understand what is driving defilements, if you give up these unprofitable or corrupt or sick perceptions, because that's what's driving, say, for example, derogation, disparaging, envy, stinginess. A lot of it is me and mine, me and mine, me and mine. You know, it should be for me, it should be for me. And when we're unhappy with people, we assume that they're having permanent happiness. We also assume that they're going to live for a long time as well, that they're going to be permanently like that. And we also assume that there is this long lasting happiness. And so there's a lot of flaws in our thinking. So when you do the meditation, if you're very skilled, and some of you I know are very skilled, if you're skilled and you say, I don't believe any of these perceptions, I completely abandon these perceptions, then what happens is the mind goes very, very still. So that's the tip, even for doing suvaco, that if you really take the Dhamma to your mind and you really connect through your examples and you really see that they're actually built on sick perceptions, unprofitable perceptions, if you immediately give them up, if you take the profitable ones, it's not me and mine, it's not permanent, there's no beauty in this, there's no permanent pleasure, then immediately the mind goes still. And so that's a very, very clean mind, at least for a few moments. So let's do a short meditation just to practice this Dhamma. So look at these four things. So derogation, makka. So this is where we remove people's good quality. And there is this anger within that. And also envy, issa. So this is conditioned by the derogation. We're jealous of others' gains. We want that to be ours, thinking that that person is having permanent pleasure. Then we also want to abandon the disparaging, so the palasa. This is where we divide. We don't want people to be harmonious. We want to divide them. And that's because we have differences in our volitional formation. We have preferences about certain people, about their ideas and their behaviors. And then we also want to remove the stinginess. So there are 5 kinds of stinginess, but basically we're not generous. We're very protective, and so we're wanting to exclude. If you understand that they're based on sick perceptions, corrupt perceptions, then you give them up. They don't go with metta. And so if we remove them, then we know that ultimately when we start spreading metta, we can spread to all living beings with no exception. So let's do this meditation on easy to instruct. Make sure you disapprove of all these things after taking your example, and let the mind really uplift. Let the mind get happy and still. Okay, blessings of the Triple Gem. Let's do this meditation. Blessings of the Triple Gem. You can come out of the meditation now. So we will finish off with the sutta that I posted, or the Buddha quote that I posted this week as inspiration for our practice. I think it's a good point to end at suvaco, easy to instruct. We'll do more next week on what it takes to be gentle, and hopefully we'll also get to being not arrogant, being humble. So this last one, these are the Buddha's words from Itivuttaka, discourse number 22, and it's the Metta Sutta. And within that sutta, some of the Buddha's words are: one should train in deeds of merit that yield long-lasting happiness. So generosity, tranquil conduct, developing a mind of loving kindness. So generosity, we know. Tranquil conduct is what we've been practicing. So we are becoming more skilled at having good conduct. So this means the morality, the virtue, and then developing a mind of loving kindness, which is what we're doing. In very simple terms, this is like dana, sila, and then bhavana. So we have the generosity, we have the virtue, and we are meditating, developing the mind. So then Buddha says, by cultivating these three things, deeds yielding happiness, the wise person is reborn in an untroubled, happy world. So at the minimum, this is what can be expected, because what we are doing is we're making merit. Now, of course, we know that loving kindness is a pathway to Nibbana. So ultimately, at some point during these sessions, we'll actually be addressing that, how that becomes that pathway. So we can end our session here. We can share the merit and the blessings. So let's pay gratitude to the Buddha for these wonderful teachings and for helping us to find the way out of suffering. We can also pay gratitude to all the teachers who have helped us up until this point and who are still helping us. And we can share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem to all of you. May you continue to grow in wholesome qualities, and see you next week. Blessings of the Triple Gem. Terowan Saranai.